This Tales of the Abyss retrospective was brought to you by my lovely patrons on Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you can get your name shouted out at the start of every Xenosanctum video, as well as access to bonus behind the scenes content. Back in my Tales of Symphonia review, I expressed how, despite being a near perfect transition into 3D for the Tales series, I don't view Symphonia with as much praise as I do other games in the series. And one of the biggest reasons for that view is due to the fact that immediately after finishing Tales of Symphonia, the team behind the game would create this, a game that would, in nearly all aspects, blow Symphonia completely out of the water. To find out why I say that, let's take a look back on 2005's Tales of the Abyss for the PlayStation 2. While Tales of Rebirth, and to a lesser extent Tales of Legendia, would be met with positive reception, most fan anticipation was aimed at Team Symphonia's next 3D Tales game. Tales of Symphonia had boosted the series to new heights with its near flawless transition into 3D, thus fans were all too keen to see how the team could improve on that game and its multi-line linear motion battle system. While information on this new game's development is scarce, it's highly likely that development for this game began as soon as work on Tales of Symphonia came to a close in 2003, with the vast majority of developers returning to make this game. This included Yoshito Higuchi, returning this time as sole director for the game, as veteran Tales director Ichi Kikuchi had now become a general director overseeing multiple Tales games development. Along with Higuchi, Kosuke Fujishima would return to design the characters, making this his third Tales project and his first time developing characters outside of the Fantasia universe. With the GameCube now a commercial failure, the team would abandon the console and instead develop their new game for the PlayStation 2, making this the fifth Tales game to release on the system, as well as the last original Tales game if we're not counting the remake of Tales of Destiny released in 2006. With the console decided, the team would look to new ways to improve the battle system from Symphonia. This included basic quality of life improvements, such as the dynamic camera used in the PS2 port of Symphonia, as well as a new free-run system to allow the player to move in full 3D space. A free-run system had originally been designed during Tales of Symphonia's development, but had to be scrapped due to breaking the game, with the enemy AI being way too exploitable. Thus, to make such a mechanic work, the enemy AI had to be improved to account for lateral movements by the player. With free run the main focus of the game's combat, the battle system would be tweaked to make full use of this new mechanic. This would result in the creation of the Field of Phonon systems, to encourage the player to use free run to optimally position their characters. The creation of phonons would also influence the plot, putting a much greater focus on the magic system and its role in the universe than had previously been seen in Tales games. The team would come up with the idea of a plot involving the main cast trying to prevent the world falling into an abyss, which would end up being the game's namesake, becoming one of only two mainline Tales games to include the word "the" in the title. The plot would also tackle the issue of predetermined fate, as well as how one responds to having their future mapped out. This in turn would give the game its characteristic genre of discovering the meaning of life RPG. Tales of the Abyss would initially be leaked when a 2004 trademark for the game would be discovered by game journalists. However, the proper reveal of the game would come in yet another pre-order bonus, this time with Tales of Legendia. Namco, this is not how you reveal a game. Either way, the game would release on the 15th of December 2005. 4 months later, in 2006, a North American release would be announced and would be later shown off at that year's E3, releasing later in October. However, just as with nearly every other previous Tales game, no PAL release would be announced, depriving Europeans and Australians from playing the game until the 3DS port released in November 2011. With Team Symphonia's last Tales game being a smash hit, could this game possibly live up to and even exceed its predecessor? The story begins with a recount on a prophecy about a boy of royal blood who will bring prosperity to the kingdom of Kimlaska Lanvadir, and a war that will be fought between Kimlaska and its rival the Molkuth Empire over the destruction of the island of Hod. The story then jumps to the Kimlaskan capital of Batikul, where we meet our protagonist, Luke von Fabre. 7 years ago, Luke was kidnapped by Molkuth, and the trauma from the event would lead to the loss of all his memories from the time before the kidnapping. Following his rescue, Luke now remains confined to his father's manor for his protection, despite his protests to go out and see the world. Luke's life takes a dramatic turn when, during a sword practice session with his mentor, Van Grant, the manor falls under attack by a mysterious female assassin. The assassin tries to kill Van, but is prevented when Luke blocks her attack. The act of blocking her attack suddenly causes a hyper-resonance to occur, teleporting Luke and the assassin halfway across the world to a random valley in the middle of nowhere. In the valley, the assassin reveals herself to be Van's younger sister, Tia Grant, and offers to escort Luke back to Baticul as an apology for teleporting him. Luke is reluctant to accept due to Tia's previous actions, but is left with no other choice as he knows little to nothing about the outside world. The two then leave the valley and are both able to catch a ride in a stagecoach, but soon find that coach is heading in the wrong direction, leaving the two in Molkuth territory. The two decide to head back, but are unfortunately stopped when the bridge they initially crossed is destroyed by bandits. The two instead head to the small village of Engave, where they run into Ion, the leader of the Order of Lorelei, who has been on a solo mission trying to stop a war between Kimluska and Molkuth. The three are then arrested by the Molkuth military led by Colonel J. Curtis, who soon finds out that Luke is a member of Kimluskan royalty. Hoping like Ion to also prevent a war, Jade requests Luke to escort himself and Ion back to Baticul to deliver a letter of peace, to which Luke reluctantly agrees. And with that, Luke, Tia, Ion and Jade head off to Baticul. Along the way, they fall meet up with Guy Cecile, Luke's childhood friend who has been sent out to find him following the disappearance, as well as Anis Tatlin, who is one of Ion's personal guards. Together the group find themselves in combat with the 6 god generals of the Order of Lorelei, who have been sent to capture Ion on behalf of Grand Maestro Mose, another high-ranking member of the Order who has his sights on starting a war. The story continues from there, and for the full story breakdown, outside of the usual cutscene compilations, the best I could find was this trio of videos by Firescale 20, which seems to cover the bulk of the plot, link in the description below. Straight from the get-go, it's clear that Team Symphonia has tried to outdo their previous efforts when it comes to Tales of the Abyss's presentation. From the more detailed character models to the more cinematic angles to cutscenes, this game really tries to push the PS2 to its limits. However, the more detailed designs to the world of Abyss ends up being a double-edged sword, as in my own personal opinion, Tales of the Abyss has aged the worst out of the 6th gen Tales games, with Symphonia and Legendia benefiting from simpler character models, while Destiny 2 and Rebirth have the advantage of being 2D Tales games. While nowhere near as bad as some other PS2 games, Tales of the Abyss can definitely look very rough when the camera goes into those close-up shots on the character models, the worst one in my opinion being Tia, whose character model was never designed to be viewed this close up. Despite aging poorly, the game still presents well in towns, dungeons and overworld. Interestingly, Abyss brings back the Earth-like curvature to the overworld, not seen since Tales of Destiny. It also thankfully brings back contact encounters from Symphonia, making battles much easier to initiate and avoid. The game also makes avoiding enemies much easier than in previous games by giving you access to sea and air vehicles much earlier in the game than previous entries. This does, however, cause an issue later on when the plot makes you jump randomly from one corner of the world to another, leading to you becoming disorientated. The cross-map traversal isn't the only issue with the plot. Tales of the Abyss takes a much more science fiction route to its plot than we have previously seen, with terms like phonons, replicants, and hyper-resonance being thrown around like normal day-to-day words. These sci-fi elements to the plot can go borderline Xenosaga levels at some points, resulting in the story being hard to follow in multiple places. On a side note, for those interested, phonons, spelt with an F, are actually based off phonons, spelt with a PH, which are the particleized form of sound waves in the same way that photons are the particleized form of light waves. This is also why sound plays a major role in the game's story. While the story can be a bit of a mixed bag in some places, the characters are some of the best we've seen yet. Abyss follows in the footsteps of its Team Destiny games and gives us a cast of 6 playable characters. Joining Luke on his journey are the aforementioned Tia, Jade, Guy and Anis, as well as Princess Natalia Luz Kimluska Lavendir, who joins the party to keep an eye on Luke, who is supposedly betrothed to her despite Luke not remembering the proposal. All 6 of these characters bring a lot of personality to the screen, from Jade's trolling to Anis's creepy ambitions, to Natalia's mightier-than-thou personality. I really enjoyed following this cast no matter how hard the story was to follow. If there was one weak character I had to point to in the group, it would probably be Tia, who as the serious plot explainer isn't quite given the same level of out-there personality as the other 5 members. Along with the 6 main characters, you also have Ion, who, despite not being playable, is able to be called in by Luke to help extend his Mystic Art attacks. You will also temporarily be able to play Ash of the 6 God Generals, who joins your party for a short while in the middle part of the game. Speaking of the God Generals, not only does Tales of the Abyss have some amazing protagonists, but some amazing antagonists too. While the concept of the enemy team has been around since Tales of Destiny with the Oberon Corporation executives, the God Generals really push the concept to the next level. For starters, each one of the 6 god generals is set up to mirror one of the 6 main party members. This really helps bring out the characters as the dark side versions of your party, and combine this with their frequent appearance in the story makes the god generals some of the best villains in the entire series. Getting away from the story and characters, Tales of the Abyss sees the return of Symphonia-style voiceless box skits, although characters will occasionally appear in full body form when the skit requires it. Along with the skits returning, so does the Sorcerer's Ring, this time being carried by the party's mascot, Mew, who uses the ring to perform its flame-shooting actions. Just like in Symphonia, you'll be able to unlock new abilities for the ring, however they no longer go away once you leave dungeons and can be used in other dungeons too. Cooking also returns from past games, but now has an extra dimension added to it due to Tales of the Abyss's shopping economy. Certain towns will have access to certain resources over others, thus prices can fluctuate drastically as you go from town to town. Thus it becomes more profitable to buy weapons from one place but food in another. The economy is not just limited to where you are, but when you are too, as the game events can also change prices. While the prices will not make or break your gameplay, this feature and everything else I have discussed here really goes to show how much effort Team Symphonia has put into making this their best Tales game to date, and that effort also shows through in the battle system. Tales of the Abyss finally brings us back to a 3D battle system with the Flex Range Linear Motion Battle System, or FRLMBS. With battles in 3D, we once again see the return of the multi-line mechanic from Symphonia, in which your character will fight along 2D planes based off who they are targeting. We also see the return of sweep attacks, although they are now tied to the down direction, with neutral attacks now acting as fast flurry attacks. However, Tales of the Abyss truly brings battles into the third dimension with its groundbreaking mechanic, or should I say game-breaking mechanic, Free Run. While not initially available from the start, characters will soon unlock the ability to move in full 3D space by holding L2 in battle. This allows the characters to reposition themselves around the stage, thus preventing those moments when you get trapped on the side of the arena. It also gives you the ability to approach the enemy from any angle, allowing for some pretty cheap tricks as you strafe the enemy until they attack, only for you to run up behind them and hit them before they can finish their attack animation. The developers have somewhat tried to limit the power of Free Run by making you unable to attack while in the mode, as well as giving enemies more sweep attacks. However, the mechanic still remains very powerful in combat. With combat now more open, Abyss adds a new dynamic to combat with the Field of Phonon systems. When a powerful attack is made by either your party or the enemy, the element of that attack may linger on as a Field of Phonons, or FOF. These FOF rings will remain in place for a short while before disappearing. If your character moves into one of these FOFs and uses the correct skill, now called arts, they will trigger a more powerful version of that art, which takes on the FOF's elemental effect. This incentivizes you to utilize Free Run to position your character over these FOFs to use them. Initially your character will only be able to make use of the more powerful FOFs, but via the game's customization system, you'll also be able to make use of the weaker white FOFs as well. Gee, I'm saying FOF a lot. These customizations come in the form of font slot chambers, capacity cores, and additional skills. Font slot chambers are attached to your individual arts and come in 4 different forms: red, blue, green and yellow, with differing properties depending on the art they are being applied to. This somewhat brings over the art customization mechanic from the Team Destiny games as a real nice addition. Along with font slot chambers, we also have the new capacity cores, which replace the EX gems from Symphonia. These cores apply additional stat gains when you level up, thus allowing you to customize your character's builds as you progress through the game. It's also through these capacity cores that your characters can learn additional skills. These skills are slowly unlocked naturally through level ups as well as through capacity cores, and they will grant your character new abilities in battle, such as magic guarding and overlimit. Overlimit returns from Symphonia, but this time it's now displayed as a gauge below your character's HP and TP. When it is full, you'll be able to go into overlimit by pressing R2 on the controller. While in overlimit, you will face reduced damage as well as have super armor. You'll also be able to use mystic arts once you unlock the skill. Along with these mystic arts, your character will also be able to unlock even more powerful mystic arts later in the game by meeting special conditions which, while hard to unlock, yield some extremely high damaging attacks. Going over to the cast, Tales of the Abyss has done a great job in trying to even out the party's combat style, such that everyone is fun to play. As the protagonist, Luke once again remains the easiest of the characters to play. Returning to the standard getup of single-wheeled swordsman, Luke plays very similar to previous Tales protagonists like Reed and Kyle, but does have some differences in his unique arts. For a short stint in the party, Ash's playstyle is very much a quote-unquote clone of Luke, except with the addition of a handful of spells. Tyr takes on the role as the party's main healer, but also has access to several knife-throwing arts, as well as her phonic hymns, which sort of act like Colette's angel spells from Symphonia. However, I found Tyr much easier to play. Jade fills in for the main caster of the party with access to the majority of the spells in the game. However, using his spear, he is also able to do some pretty effective close combat play. Guy is the person you'll play when you really want to abuse the free run mechanic, as his high agility allows him to play the hit and run game extremely well, and there are countless videos on YouTube showing how broken he is. On the other end of the scale is Anis, who takes on the group's tank-like role, which unfortunately means she can't abuse free run as much as the other party members. Regardless, she still hits hard with her oversized doll, and can even cast some pretty powerful spells. Finishing up the main cast is Natalia, who brings back bows to the series after their long absence since Tales of Destiny 2. Natalia also has access to a plethora of healing spells, allowing for her to replace Tyr as the party's main healer. With the cast now much more balanced than in previous Tales games, multiplayer has been greatly improved. The 3D dynamic camera introduced in the PS2 port of Symphonia has also returned, thus making multiplayer easier. Altogether, Tales of the Abyss's battle system is a huge step up from Symphonia, and is a blast to play, and I haven't even mentioned the battle themes. Now I'm going to do this section a little backwards by first talking about the opening. Tales of the Abyss's opening song Karma would be performed by the Japanese rock group Bump of Chicken, and yes, I did just read that right. The band's lead vocalist, Moto Fujiwara, would also assist in the composition of other songs in the game, alongside series veterans Motoi Sakuruba and Shinji Tamura, returning back to the scene after being absent in Tales of Legendia. The result of Fujiwara's collaboration in the score would be the incorporation of the opening song into the game's soundtrack, with multiple riffs of Karma's melody appearing in multiple tracks, including most notably the battle theme Meaning of Birth. Speaking of the battle theme, Abyss has, in my opinion, the greatest selection of battle themes in the entire Tales series. From The Arrow Was Shot to Awkward Justice to Never Surrender, Abyss doesn't stop delivering with one amazing battle theme after another. Even the game's lesser battle themes like Edge of a Decision are still some of the best battle themes in the entire series. If I haven't made it clear enough, I love Tales of the Abyss's soundtrack. From its incorporation of the main theme to its amazing battle tracks to the fact that this game is practically built around the concept of music, with Tyr's grand phonic hymn playing a major role throughout the story and soundtrack. To me, Tales of the Abyss represents the magnum opus of Sakuruba and Tamura's work on the Tales series. While later Tales games will have their amazing tracks, I don't believe any of them have been able to come as close to the complete package that is this game's score. With the game's score revolving around the opening song Karma, Namco US would finally choose not to replace the opening song in the NTSC version of the game's opening cinematic. They would, however, replace the vocal track with a solo guitar. As with the opening cinematic, Production IG once again returns to make one of their longest Tales opening cinematics. While I enjoy Abyss's opening, I do often remember it as one of the more violent Tales openings, like, geez guys, do you have to murder those monsters that badly? After playing this game and Tales of Rebirth, I've noticed a fundamental change in the series' quality, as the games are no longer good. They are incredible. Playing Tales of the Abyss again for the first time in years, I had forgotten just how much fun this game is to play. Abyss takes the formula set out in Tales of Symphonia and improves on nearly every aspect to it to create an incredible JRPG experience. Battles are arguably where the game improves the most. The free run mechanic finally brings us the true 3D battle system that Symphonia was lacking, and the Field of Fernon system expands this even more by putting a major emphasis on your character's in-battle positioning. Even ignoring the free run and FOF mechanics, the more detailed skill and stat customizations, combined with the more balanced cast playstyles, makes battles so much more fun to play. Speaking about the cast, Abyss truly shows how far we've come since the days of Fantasia's simple JRPG cast. Unlike all previous Tales games, I really don't have anything negative to say about Abyss's cast. They truly are some of the best characters the series has ever seen. Luke has a solid character arc, Guy and Anis bring out enjoyable larger-than-life personalities, and Jade is arguably the best troll character in the series. Okay, second best. While it might seem like I view Tales of the Abyss as a near-perfect game, there are still a handful of flaws which I think hold it back from being a truly top-tier Tales game. For starters, the story can be a bit of a mess in some places, with a heavy reliance on technobabble, along with multiple cross-map trips in the second half of the game. I also think that Luke's character development is a bit inconsistent in places, most notably near the end of the first act where he seemingly becomes insufferable for seemingly no reason. While I enjoyed the plot in this game, I personally think that Tales of Symphonia has the more overall cohesive narrative, despite its weaker cast. Graphically too, this game has aged the worst out of all the 6th generation Tales games due to its reliance on close-up character models and overly detailed environments that simply could not be achieved on a PS2. This is also combined with some extremely long load times, especially when going in and out of the overworld. Arguably, this is the game out of the 3 Team Symphonia games that really needs a remake the most, which is why it's ironic that it's the only one without a remake on modern systems. Well, we have finally reached the end of the 6th generation Tales games. Now it's time to go over to the handhelds to look at our very first Nintendo DS Tales game, with none other than... Sorry, 1 second. Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World? Impossible! You're supposed to be an escort title! Ah, but Bandai Namco rebranded the Tales series in 2020, which now classifies me as a main series game. Impossible! If you're a main series game, then that means... Hello.